It's February 8th, 2022, and this is not quite the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. Oh, wait a minute.
Martin, this is a joint podcast this time, right?
Of course. It's going to be fun. Welcome to my show, and I guess I'll welcome myself to yours, Don.
Yes, this is also Photo Geek Weekly, episode 165, and Martin and I. What is the date today? It's the end of January, January 29th. It'll probably be released at the beginning of February. But Martin, I'm glad we can kind of cross-pollinate our audience here. Our streams get to intermingle.
Yeah, it's going to be fun, and we are, of course, we're doing this partly because we're both going to be speaking at the Out of Chicago live event again in February. So we're going to give a quick blast out to that.
Well, actually, I want you to, but before we get into that, leave that as a bit of a teaser. I want to know what's going on with you, man, and I want to opine about my own adventures here, and then we can talk about what we're going to be doing
Absolutely.
with Chicago.
Okay, well,
it's been a while since I've chatted with you. It was 2021, the last time we had a conversation. A lot can happen in a short period of time. So what adventures have you gotten up to?
For a long while now, I've had an idea for, it's initially going to be iOS and hopefully Android pretty soon after that. But I've always wanted a really nice looking desk clock on my iPhone. And there's some of them in the Apple Store, and they're pretty good, but could never find anything that I really like the look of. And so I've spent the last month developing a new iOS app, and it's about a week away from release. But it looks great. It's a really nice looking desk clock or clock for in the evening, when you're in bed. But there's the option to either load your own images in the background as the background photos, or pay a little bit extra for some of my photos as the background. So it's like a cross between a slideshow and a clock, but it looks really good. And I've spent every waking hour working on that since the end of December. So I've been a bad husband as usual. But that's
you know what would be a really interesting use for this too, Martin. You said like a desk clock type of idea. I have sitting in my drawer here my wife's old iPhone, and I'm not sure if I guess I could probably recycle it, but the screen is dinged up and scratched and cracked, and it's really not in great shape, and the battery is not fantastic on it either. It could lead another life, sitting permanently fixed on a desk or a nightstand or something like that.
Yeah.
Rather than just collecting dust in a drawer.
Yeah. I have like a stand, I'm holding it up here, but we're talking and we're never going to release the video. But I have a stand that I use on my desk, which is a charger at the same time. And so, just drop it onto that. Even your regular phone, if you don't want to leave the screen on for very long, an old phone does the trick. And it really does look good. I've made it sort of customizable, so you can have the numbers can be Roman numerals or no numbers or literal normal numbers, all sorts of different things. And the background can be made in various degrees of transparency, so that you can see the photos behind it and stuff. It really looks I'm very happy with how it's turned out. So I'm looking forward to getting that out and seeing how it goes.
I already have like version 2.0 of your project in my mind, because I have it's not with me right now. It's still in Canada. We have to ship a lot of our belongings from Canada here to Bulgaria still. But I have a Nixie tube desk clock. And wouldn't it be cool to have, instead of Roman numerals or whatever type of display, to have like Nixie tubes and to like actually record video of a live tube going through the number sequences and use that as it.
Yeah.
But further, you could probably record like a wire or like just a black and white grid in behind to see how the tube itself distorts straight lines.
Yeah.
And then you could use that data to distort the images as they're displayed behind the tubes themselves. I'm making a heck of a lot of work for you here, Martin, but
I think it's going to be more like version 5 than 2, but yeah, I love it. And this is why I really enjoy speaking with you, Don, because you're always so geeky. And that's, of course, the main theme of your podcast. So tell us how you're going, how you're doing. What have you been up to recently?
You know what? In a sense, I'm still getting my legs here in Bulgaria on the coast of the Black Sea, and not in a bad way.
Mm,
It's just it takes a while for things to completely get back up to steam the way that you might have already been in a proper routine before.
mm,
And that includes setting up proper lighting in my studio. It includes, as I mentioned, shipping all of our belongings that we couldn't carry with us over here on the plane.
mm,
But as time goes on, the I guess the value of those belongings becomes less and less. We threw
mm,
a lot out before we moved, and we packed everything into one small room in our house that we're renting out at the moment. But I don't miss those possessions. Like if I don't need them, it's like a huge weight that has
mm,
lifted off of my shoulders. And
mm,
and here in Bulgaria, we've started on a construction project to build this beautiful stone oven and outdoor kitchen off of the back
mm,
entrance of our house. And that's coming along quite nicely, and it'll be finished within the month. And when that's done, we have this wonderful little slice of peace and paradise
mm,
that through the spring and summer months is just going to be such a joy to sit back with a book and relax and read and listen to the birds and the
mm.
chickens and the dogs of the village that we live in, and just really kind of rediscover the core ingredients that we want to have in our lives. I
Mm,
don't mean like for this to be like a sabbatical or something like that. I'll be creative through the whole process.
mm,
But I feel like, as with many of my colleagues in North America, that running the rat race really runs you on empty constantly. And being a
mm,
creative running on empty on a constant basis is a really difficult thing because it forces you
mm,
to be creative. And as soon as you're forced into that methodology of, okay, well, now I have to think outside the box and I have to force myself to, create magic and be interesting and be inspired, you can't force inspiration. You can try,
mm.
but the end result is not going to be as good as it should be. So those
Yeah.
batteries are in the process of recharging right now, all for the better.
Mm. Excellent. Yeah, I both myself and my wife will be happy when I can finally get some recharging time again. I'm not the best of people to be around when I'm doing development work, so I can totally relate to that.
And I've had some people reach out to me in the last little while. It's like, Don, we just read your book. When are you doing workshops again? And I'm thinking, yeah, it's on the roadmap to do workshops here in Bulgaria. Probably not until 2023.
Mm,
This year will be a lot of discovery and then some planning and what have you. But that doesn't stop the virtual workshops, especially
mm,
globally. You don't have to leave your desk.
yeah.
And Martin, you're in Japan. I'm in Bulgaria, but we are both participating in an out of Chicago conference. The world is a global village these days,
Mm.
and we're starting that up in March. You've got all the details on that. Why don't you spill the beans?
Yeah, so we're both going to be we're actually doing a joint session on one of the days as well. So this is going to be fun. But we're going to be speaking at the Out of Chicago live event. It's going to happen from March the 11th to the 13th, 2022. And all sessions are recorded and available for 12 months after the event. And you can learn more and register at www.outofchicago.com. It's going to be a lot of
Please take
fun.
a look at that.
Yeah.
Because it is, well, it's not only going to be fun, but Martin and I were discussing via email some ideas for our joint session. We still don't know what we're going to do. Maybe after we're done recording this conversation for this podcast, we'll sit down and have a more detailed discussion. But the
Yeah.
fact is that, when you get two interesting geeky minds together on the subject of macro photography, and probably we'll go into microscopy and all the wonderful challenges that you face as you get closer and closer to subjects, it's going to be a fun conversation no matter how you slice it. And there's going to be a lot of other wonderful discussions happening during that Out of Chicago conference.
Mm.
Barton, is it your first time working with them? I've done a few myself in the past.
I was there. Like we spoke in last year's whatever, in some of the parties and things as well. So I'm a little bit hurt that you don't recall that, but it's
it's so much happens over a
I
short period of
know,
time.
I
And the
know.
after hour parties I think it was like in the morning for you because
It
of
was,
the
it
time zone
was.
difference. And if I remember now, you were, somewhat, you were asking permission because you had an early morning session in Chicago time, but it would be late at night for you if you could be having a libation during your presentation.
That
And I
was
thought
it.
that
You've
was the
got it.
cutest thing.
Yeah, I often I try not to mix having a drink with work, and it was definitely work, but it was a lot of fun as well. So I thought, it's late for me. I'm going to probably grab a drink. But yeah, now you've got it. So that
There
was
we
the
go.
first time, though. That was the first one of those events that I've done with the Out of Chicago folks. I remember I was invited a number of years ago, but it was when the world was still normal, and it would have involved paying for a flight over to Chicago for me, and that made it a little bit more difficult to make it work. So now that the world has shrunk because of the pandemic, it's actually making it easier for me to do that sort of thing, just as you said.
And for me too. I mean, yeah, I could take a flight back there. I drove down to when they had their conference out of Longwood Gardens,
Hmm.
and that was a ton of fun. And I don't want to say that this is a substitute for in person learning because they really are two separate
Yeah.
entities. Being hands on in a physical location with somebody is incredibly valuable, but so too is the online distance learning, especially when you can revisit the exact recordings of that for up to a year
Hmm.
and kind of go back and catch all the stuff that you missed, because so many times in person, when I've done workshops, it all clicks in and makes perfect sense to somebody,
Yeah.
and then they try to recall exactly what that was
Hmm.
even an hour later, and it's very difficult for them to put those pieces together. I liken it to watching a documentary film, and they explain some piece of complicated science in such perfect layman's terms, all the light bulbs are going off in my head, and then I try to explain it to somebody the day after. I got nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a bit of a juxtaposition between these two things, and yes, they do cross over a little bit, but they really need to be looked at as separate entities. And I should mention as well that Martin and I both do workshops separately from this. I've got one coming up virtually also in March and April on macro photography from Princeton Photo Workshop, and you can check that out. And Martin, on your
Hmm.
website, I'm sure you've got some stuff in the works as well, right?
Well, I have, but most of my workshops are like location tours, and unfortunately, they haven't been happening for the last 2 years. And I'm kind of wondering if I have two Namibia tours coming up in April and May, and they are probably not going to happen as well. So I mean, a lot of, like you say, a lot of the virtual stuff is still going ahead, and it's actually building. But um, my main workshops that I do in beautiful locations are taking a bit of a battering.
Yeah. Well, and I've got this grand idea of having people here in my village to do a macro photography workshop for a day,
Mm,
and then spend a week touring around Bulgaria
mm,
to visit the caves and mountaintops and waterfalls and ancient Roman ruins and whatever else that there is to see that we could pack into a week, and wind it down with another day of macro
mm.
here in in this village. And that I think would be a huge hit. And if you're interested, send me an email. But it's not happening this year. There's just absolutely no way. And not only with my own setup still in progress here, but the world is, I don't think, ready for that, even if I was ready for it at this
Right.
point. So
Yeah. That's
it'll
the
come
problem.
back.
It will come back. But it's going to take another year or so, I think. So your plans sound solid.
Well, let's talk about things that may or may not come back if we get into the stories that we're going to talk about on this joint episode of the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast and Photo Geek Weekly. Uh, uh, it's from DP Review, an update of an article from Ricoh, and I'll read through it and their update and sort of what this might mean and what we could possibly opine on here. But questioning the value of mass production and mass sales, Ricoh is looking to take a more direct-to-consumer approach, at least in Japan. And it's great that I have you on the conversation here because that's from where you currently hail. So Ricoh, their sales haven't been great. I mean, just there's no way to sugarcoat that. Ricoh owns the Pentax brand, and Pentax has said that they are pretty well sticking to the flapping mirror design of cameras, and they're not jumping onto the mirrorless bandwagon, although of course, Ricoh with their GR cameras and a lot of other things, they've got some very nice compact cameras, obviously without a mirror. But they have been playing not second fiddle, but like fourth or fifth down the line to the bigger players, and with a contracting camera industry, how do they stay afloat? And one of the ideas is that, well, maybe they make a camera to order. So they don't have a massive inventory of stuff just sitting in a warehouse waiting for somebody to buy, and maybe it doesn't, and then the product cycle shifts, and now the next one has to come out, but they're still sitting on inventory from the previous one, and that doesn't make good business sense. So what if you take a more direct-to-consumer approach? You can cut out the retailers, which honestly has been happening for a good chunk of time already, and go directly to the people that want to buy your equipment. But in doing so, there's a lot of interesting business mentality shifts, a paradigm shift, if you will, that could take place. So first of all, Martin, what do you think about what Ricoh could do versus where the industry is going, and is there still a place for Pentax?
It's a really interesting move, and I'm kind of surprised by it in some ways. In that, I didn't realize that Pentax were hurting so much sales wise, but I think the idea of it's almost like taking values back a few decades, where camera manufacturers used to be more hands-on with their customers. I remember hearing stories of I think it was probably Canon, probably through one of my friends over there. But they would, for example, take all of the oil out of, or the grease out of cameras that were going to go to places like Everest, because they would once the grease freezes up, the camera stops working. So rather than saying, okay, you can't use our cameras in -40, which is what they put on all of the consumer camera specifications, they would say, oh, yeah, you can use it, but you got to give us the camera for a few weeks to take all of the grease out. And that used to be something you heard of. And it sort of went away because of the consumerism and the things that Ricoh or Pentax are currently talking about moving away from again. So I think it's a good thing in a way. And I can certainly see that there will be, people, and especially it's interesting that it is happening here in Japan. I can imagine there's going to be a lot of people saying, I want this, I want that. I would love to be able to be, to say to Canon, yeah, your cameras are great, but you have been taking the GPS out of all of the cameras that I buy. They had it. They're literally skipping all of the bodies that I feel are the best for my workflow. Stick it in there, guys. I'll pay you an extra $100 or a few hundred. It'd probably be a lot more than that to customize a camera, but you know what I mean.
Well, and the 1D series from Canon used to have, they might even still have. I haven't looked at the current crop of them, but a little port on the side that you could plug in optional accessories. And they introduced that at a time where that could be a Wi-Fi adapter, a GPS adapter, and now Wi-Fi is built into all the camera bodies and GPS in some of them. But that modularity, I think, would be welcome. In fact, there was a modular laptop design that I saw recently where you could just kind of slide in a port.
Mm,
And it could have anything you want on it. It could be various types of USB or display port or whatever it is, and
mm,
you could just kind of slot them in. And I thought that would be kind of an interesting thing for camera manufacturers to do as well. Take the entire port mechanism on the side and make that modular so that you could choose your inputs that you find most useful for yourself. But also, if
mm,
you break something, you don't have to send the camera in for repairs. You can just kind of swap out that component. So,
mm,
from that perspective, there could be some advantage to doing that. You mentioned Canon. And not too long ago, Canon was still producing variants of some of their cameras for astrophotography that
yeah,
had a
yeah.
slightly modified high and low pass filter array to allow for hydrogen alpha which is like a very deep red spectral line to be received by the camera that normally would be blocked
Mm,
by those filters. They also made a version, I think, of the 7D that had a barcode scanner attachment or the ability
mm,
to be compatible with barcode scanners so that if you were
mm,
doing school portraits, you could add into the EXIF data of the image the barcode information from that particular student so that you had all of your data properly synchronized. And I thought that was
mm,
neat as well. I want more of that kind of specialization from every manufacturer. If
mm,
Pentax as a brand is forced into this sort of idea of direct to consumer, they can truly embrace that idea.
mm,
You could have a GPS option, or you know what, if you want your camera in some funky color,
mm,
Pentax has been known to do that in the past, right? So that's
yeah,
kind of right up their alley to say, if they do a Kickstarter campaign, and
yeah.
as a limited edition from that Kickstarter campaign, you could choose your camera in any one of 16 unusual colors. You want
Mm.
neon lime green? It's there for you. And it's would I want that camera? Absolutely not. But if you're doing uh, or hey, you know what? It does actually make sense if you're doing camera work in some industrial scenario, or you're putting your camera inside of like a water enclosure that might end up being dropped on the bottom of a lake. Maybe a bright, vibrant neon orange
Mm,
actually makes sense to have the camera body that color so that you could spot it
yeah,
in a location where it otherwise might be lost.
yeah.
There's lots of niche scenarios where that type of stuff might be useful. And if Ricoh is seeing the writing on the wall that they can't be stocking the shelves with their cameras anymore, maybe the retailers just aren't interested in stocking them either, because there's a risk on both sides of that you might have the ability to try something new with an age-old brand in a world that, yeah, you know what? I buy a lot of stuff on Kickstarter all the time.
Mm,
Sometimes it's a success. Sometimes we talked about on a recent episode the K lens, which
mm,
was it would create this array of 9 different images with mirrors that all had a slightly different perspective from one another.
mm.
That would be great for 3D augmented reality, creating very detailed and accurate depth maps. They just canceled their Kickstarter campaign. I had backed it for more than €2,000,
Mm,
and I was really looking forward to getting that lens. And instead of going to market with it,
mm,
they, and a lot of companies are guilty of this, they set their bar too low to pass the threshold of 100% funding.
mm,
And unless a company completely smashes through that, if they set it too low, then even still, they won't have enough money to go to manufacture. And I guess, bonus to them, they realized that they didn't take my money and run.
mm.
They canceled the project, and my card was never charged because the campaign never completed. And they're back to the drawing board.
Wow, I
A
didn't realize
company
that.
like, yeah, and it's
I've
unfortunate
been
because
following that. I hadn't backed it, but I'd been following it, and I thought that they were going to have no problem going to market.
it's your fault, Martin. You didn't back it. They didn't have your money, and
Well,
they said, "Well, without Martin Bailey's support." Uh,
it actually doesn't interest me. That kind of photography doesn't interest me, but it's innovative, and I was watching it just because I wanted to see what happened. But that's strange, yeah,
well, with an upstart company, there's a lot of risk,
yeah,
but with a company like Ricoh, they've got I don't want to say that they have a war chest. I have no idea what their financials look like, but they would be able to pad a campaign with some money from other industries if they really needed to make it a success once it passes a certain threshold versus a return on investment and so on. So a company like that would be more apt to say, okay, you know what, if we get 100 orders for a particular camera or product, we can go ahead and know that, yeah, we're going to have 100 sales right from the beginning. And that's definitely not enough to cover the manufacturing costs and the research and development, but at least it's something to put to say we're above that level. Let's move forward and make as many of them as we think we can sell.
They're not going to be. They're not talking about designing a camera from scratch and going away and starting the R&D on how to make a sensor and stuff, are they? They've got all of that. They're really just. It's the combination of things that they. Yeah, how we put this camera together. What do you want in this camera, and then making it in that with all of your specs in mind. So to a degree, of course.
If you were left-handed and you could pay a premium for a left-handed variant of a camera, would you do it?
Probably.
I mean, I'm not left-handed, so I haven't. I'm not in that group.
Yeah.
But a certain percentage of the population might.
Well, I've always thought that in addition to that, there's the left-eyed scenario. A lot of people they have the left eye is their what is it? Not prominent. What's the word?
Not dominant.
Dominant, that's the one. So a lot of people have the left eye is the dominant eye, and they're forced in many ways to use the right eye, because if they use the left one, then the camera is sort of coming right. Their hand is right over their nose, and it doesn't feel good. So maybe just a camera that is left-handed for the left dominant, the dominant eye on the left people as well. That's all stuff that you can keep into account or put into account with this.
Well, let's keep our finger on the pulse of that, because I think that it's going to be updated on a regular basis based on, and this is important, based on feedback from the consumer base.
Yeah.
And this is a point in the history of the brand that they are the most receptive to feedback. And so if you are a Pentax shooter, or you are potentially interested in what this might be, I'm sure through some venue, you could reach out to their PR company or find a feedback form somewhere and voice your opinion. Because right now they are collecting opinions. I can guarantee you that. And if you want your opinion seen by somebody, this is the best possible time for you to get in touch.
I've actually had dinner one time with 4 of the Ricoh Pentax / Pentax developers that that actually make the cameras. So it's I know they were really, really nice people as well. So that I'm sure that the feedback loop with that kind of people is going to be a very rich experience.
Now let's talk about another feedback loop here, Martin. Story number 2 from Petapixel: the Digi Swap lets film cameras shoot directly to an iPhone. And this feedback loop has been largely a negative one. I know my opinion on it, and I will share that in a minute. But what do you think about this, dare I say, monstrosity?
I'm sort of on the fence as to whether or not I would want to pan this or say, it looks viable enough that if you are happy to be walking around with a monstrosity, then it looks viable in a viable option. I understand what you're saying as well. It looks terrible, and on the back, I actually when you sent your notes over, you mentioned the Canon AE1, which I'm holding up here now as well. I love the format of this
beautiful tactile experience with those cameras,
it's
right?
A beautiful
you
old
hold
camera.
it in your hands. You don't want to put it down.
Right. But if you stick this thing on the back, it becomes, like you say, a bit of a monstrosity.
So now, what is this thing? Let's describe this. It's an attachment that you take the back off the camera, because that's not needed. You're not loading film into this thing. And you bolt on what is effectively a piece of ground glass that captures the image on where the film plane is. And we've seen tools like this before that would use a Raspberry Pi to then image what appears on the ground glass. But instead of using a Raspberry Pi, you're then further on top of that, you're attaching your phone,
Mm.
and there's levers and adjustments in order to keep your camera, your phone in the right place so that its cameras are properly aligned. So you have your film camera, then this intermediary bolt-on device, and there has to be enough space between all of these levels for the ground glass to properly focus where the film would normally be. But then there also has to
Mm.
be a space between that and your phone, because your phone camera lens will only focus so close, so it has to be at or beyond that minimum focusing distance within that. And so you have
Mm.
this staggered approach that really builds out quite far behind the original camera itself, right?
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I mean it. I think it looks fun, and I would I wouldn't use it. I mean, I'm trying to be sort of diplomatic in that it looks fun, and I'm actually amazed it works. But if I want to use a camera like this, I'd throw a film in it, you know, and I that's what I do occasionally, even with my old AE1. I love the feel of these old cameras and the workflow. Even like just for the audio here. I mean, you give this a look at these sounds are like
It sounds so good.
yeah. I mean, it's great stuff to be working with, and I totally get it. But if I'm going to be using a camera like this, I'll just stick a film in it, you know. And so for me, it's definitely not something that I myself would buy. But watching the
Well, what if we
videos,
hybridize the idea? Tell me what you see about the videos before I go on to my next furtherance of this
well,
idea.
I watched the videos that they sent to the Petapixel guys. I mean, it looks like it's a Japanese company. We've got a lot of Japanese influence on the show today. But they sent a video showing the DigiSwap in action. It looks better than I expected it to, and it's kind of the monstrosity thing kind of gets in the way, but it's also in some ways it feels a little bit really right stuffish, if I dare say. But, and that meaning that as a compliment because really right stuff are amazing, make amazing
Yeah.
gear, but it's not for me in that if I was going to do that, I love film as well as digital. I mean, digital is my go-to. I would never be able to stop shooting digital, but I also enjoy film, and so for me, it's just that makes it a no starter.
Well, so what if you got that tactile experience, that sound,
Yeah.
the feel of you cocking the shutter, and then the sound of the shutter tripping.
Mm.
That is, it's classic. It made me want to pick up, one of those cameras again, just hearing it. So, is it possible that some enterprising company, through a Kickstarter campaign, possibly, could create a framework that your camera naturally slides into, your phone naturally slides into?
Mm.
And it wouldn't look like a traditional SLR because the lens on the camera wouldn't be centered in this new body contraption. But it would have a manual shutter cocking mechanism and a manual shutter that would have similar sounds built around an app that properly interfaces with that, so that you could configure the ISO of your phone from a dial on the top of the mechanical camera that
Mm.
plugs in and automatically changes the ISO of the camera on the phone itself.
Mm.
And you could have that interoperability it would have to be a classic lens mount like Canon FD or Leica M, or something that's purely mechanical, so you don't have to worry about autofocus and all of
Mm.
that machinery, so that things can be fairly simplistic from that perspective. But you could have this device such that you could just slide your phone in. And for most phones, the cameras are kind of in the same location, roughly. I mean, you'd have to have the ability to modify it to hit the different orientations and the different camera models and so on, and different interfaces for Android and iOS. And I understand that there's a certain level of complexity. It's not a one size fits all type of scenario. But even if it was just designed for like the iPhone, and because it's a fairly standardized platform, and you've got a large enough audience for that, I think that there would be a market for it. And I say that because if that showed up on Kickstarter, just like the K Lens, I would buy it. I would put some money down on that type of a project, and I would throw on some of. I've got a couple of vintage old M mount lenses that I picked up at. One was at a thrift store. I've got a cool old 3D lens and a couple of others that I've just collected over time. And they would be fun to use, and it would bring that tactile experience back to the mobile sort of modern day workflow that I use my camera phone more and more often, and that's only a trend that's going to continue. If I could bring the love, the joy of that manual shutter mechanism and those sounds, really those sounds, and just the clunking vibration of the camera when things operate inside of it, in that AE1, I would use it. I would buy it.
I I I don't know if I would or not, but I definitely get the appeal. And I mean, you can get a lot of these cameras. These are old. I bought this AE1 at a flea market. It works fine, but it was like, I forget how many, probably about $50, something like that. It wasn't a huge amount of money. I've got a couple of them, and being able to use those. I think the DigiSwap marketing mentioned the word, what was it? Upcycling. So not recycling, but upcycling. I like that, and I think that there's always going to be a nostalgia element to photography, and so I get it, and I think if you as you say, take away the monstrosity element by just sliding a phone in a much sleeker format. Yeah, it's definitely got more legs than the DigiSwap. But yeah, either way, I think that it's all fun. That's what it should be.
I guess that's what it boils down to, right? If you're having fun or not.
Yeah.
And if you're having fun, then more power to you.
Yeah.
I mean, keep doing what you're doing, because obviously your life is happier as a result of that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the bottom line for any artistic endeavor at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next story. I don't really have a good segue for it, but a couple of episodes ago on my podcast, anyhow, we talked about the NFT space and how it's really not a fantastic opportunity. And I suggested that people send hate mail to me if you had such. And I'm surprised I didn't get a single hate mail message. So maybe. I don't know. Maybe I've just lost a lot of listeners in the process of going dark for a couple of months, and not as many people listened. But we're back to NFTs briefly, and if you're not happy about a conversation with that, then skip ahead 10 minutes. That's fine. But DP Review is reporting that Meta, which is the parent company for Facebook, just like Alphabet is the parent company to Google. I don't know why they need to create these different names, but Meta is working on letting users create and sell NFTs on Facebook and Instagram. Martin, what do you think about NFTs?
It's a good question. I actually created 2 NFTs a couple of months ago, costing me $600 to mint and list them, which is, like, to me, I didn't realize that was what it was going to cost. I tried to dabble in them, and I think that the money that is exchanging hands for some of these things is appealing, but the more I look into the world of NFTs and what is actually selling for what's essentially silly money, the more I think it's just I don't know. It's gains
Too
for,
good to be true.
well, it's gains for rich people, or people that are pseudo rich because of the numbers that they see. Um, I would be much happier if NFTs were not total crap most of the time. Um,
Yeah.
that
Well,
is.
and so you have a scheme behind it, and I'm not saying that every scenario is like this, but let's say you're uber wealthy and you want to increase your wealth.
Mm,
Well, you can list an NFT. You could list a whole collection of NFTs,
mm,
and then say like you've got a collection of 100 of them,
mm,
and they start selling. They
mm.
start selling for like $10,000 to $20,000 a piece. I mean, they're being sold as Ethereum or whatever the cryptocurrency
Yeah,
is, but an
yeah.
equivalent dollar value, high value numbers, and that entices somebody else to say, okay, well, there's value in this collection,
Mm,
so I'm going to go and I'm going to purchase one of these items. But behind the scenes, they might not realize that the person that created the collection has a lot of wealth, and
mm,
they've actually been buying their own NFTs to
mm.
inflate the value of the ones that are still available on the market, for which
Ah,
third parties come in and purchase, which all of that money also filters back to the person that owns everything to begin with. And this is
mm,
not a new strategy here. This is done in the art world for probably centuries before now. I'm not sure exactly.
mm,
I'm not an
mm,
art historian, but I do know that that is one way to inflate the value of art from a particular artist, is
mm,
by anonymously bidding on artwork from that same artist at a very high
mm,
level to increase the value of the artwork you already have from the same artist. And this whole idea, as soon as I established it as that, kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
mm,
And then there's the whole idea of, well, so you own a pointer on a effectively a third party platform. So
mm,
you get this code that it exists on some ethereal blockchain
mm,
that is not owned by anybody, and it could be any blockchain for that matter. It could be Bitcoin or Dogecoin or Ethereum, or enter any of the hundreds of blockchains,
mm,
and no legal entity recognizes any of them, and that points towards a third party, usually a corporation, that then hosts content that they have no legal authority to say you own or not.
mm,
And the whole thing seems like a house of cards. And
mm.
especially, when you look at, and I don't know where you minted your stuff, Martin. What was it? OpenSea?
I actually I got in touch with a friend of mine, and asked
Hmm.
personally if he could get me an invite for Foundation, which is, it seemed like to me, at the best of the um, what's available, but I I also, before I did that, I created an account on OpenSea, and that seemed more reasonable because it doesn't look as though they charge you for minting until something actually starts to move financially. So it seems the better option.
Well, and I looked up OpenSea in the US Copyright.gov DMCA designated agent directory. And they're
Mm,
there. Ozone Networks Inc. Owns OpenSea. And the reason why I looked this up is because, just because you have an NFT of something, which is a digital pointer that says you own, like as we previously mentioned on episode 163, I think, that yeah, you could have some arbitrary database saying that you own a square kilometer of space on the moon, but if it's not
mm,
recognized by any government, you actually don't
mm,
own a darn thing. Uh,
mm,
and so, just because you own an NFT doesn't mean you own the copyright to it. And it
mm,
has not yet come to pass that my
mm,
artwork has shown up as an NFT, but I think it's only a
mm,
matter of time before it does. And
mm,
then I can send a DMCA takedown notice to their designated agent at copyright@opensea.io, and they have a
mm.
legal obligation to remove it. And so it doesn't
Yeah,
matter if you purchased an NFT. It doesn't matter how much Ethereum you paid for it. If you didn't own the copyright to it, you actually don't own anything.
yeah,
And the silly thing is, there's not necessarily a contract stating that anywhere in the purchasing agreement. So, and I haven't seen this happen, but
mm,
it would be an interesting thought experiment to say that it's possible that
mm,
I could list my own image as an NFT that somebody then buys and does something else with, and maybe sells it to a third party, but I didn't necessarily allow that. And then somewhere down the chain, I say, yep, that usage is no longer allowed, and send a takedown notice to OpenSea. And they don't do investigations. You can file a counter notice if you know how to do so, and then they kind of wash their hands of it. But they would have to react to that, even if I was the originator of that content. And there's nothing saying that I can't upload my own image 10 different times as different NFTs, changing a pixel here or there, or maybe not even changing a pixel at all.
I don't think you even need to change it. It's the part that is non-fungible is
the token.
It's the one, yeah, it's the token that you attach it to. So yeah, I mean, you could create an NFT of the same image, because people are buying the token that says that is their copy. You know, I'm kind of being hypocritical in a way, because I've spent a lot of time trying to market and get someone to buy the two that I created, because
I put one on OpenSea.
Yeah,
I got nothing.
And I feel as though, I look on Twitter and see people buying a copy of the gibbon with a cigar in his mouth, and I think, you know what? Although I'm not going to say to anyone that what they should and shouldn't like, it just seems to me that a lot of what is selling for very, very high amounts of money is I don't know, mediocre to not so good, and yet there are people that are trying to sell real art on there, and it goes nowhere, because why? That it's that why that's getting me. So that's what's making me.
And again, it goes back to who's buying what and who's actually real people buying things versus the same entity that's hiring and separating their wallets into different accounts and then buying their own stuff back and creating this false sense of wealth for people buying them and then selling them for 3 times what they bought it for. And then you got all these success stories that go into the minds of individuals that see this as a get rich quick scheme, and this whole too good to be true mentality. And I think that in many ways it is. But let's get back to the idea of Facebook getting into the market here. And I think it's a bad idea. Because it's not that it legitimizes NFTs at all. I think it further illegitimizes them, because then it's the whole idea of an NFT is it's decentralized. And yet every place where you actually obtain them, the pointer is decentralized, but it only exists in a centralized private entity. And the more powerful that entity is, the more they don't really care about you or your work. And Facebook is one of those companies that I send hundreds of takedown notices to a month. I send over 1,000 a year to Facebook, or companies under the umbrella. Facebook and Instagram are the two biggest. And I think it's only a matter of time before this NFT space is so misunderstood and misused that it becomes something where copyright infringement is rampant, if it isn't already. And it will further destabilize when more and more larger companies want to stick their fingers into this, when it shouldn't have any large company sticking their fingers anywhere near it, as the whole point of the blockchain originally should have been.
Agreed.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think that Facebook, similarly Google, have their ideas about how to work with individuals' content. It's all about making money. That's obviously they're corporations. They're only. Well, it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be that their only goal is to make money. But many years ago, when I was still using YouTube, I got very frustrated with Google, because they would never put any method in place for me to be able to pin a token or something to a video to show or prove that I had paid for the music. And I had I ended up deleting all of my work, everything that I posted on on YouTube, because every time I posted something, I would get a robot would come along and say, "This has got a copyright ban, a copyright strike," and it was all for things that I had a legal license for. I had the CEO of one of the music content places that I bought a license from give me a personally signed license for the music that YouTube slash Google were telling me I had used illegally. And all they're doing, they don't want to give you a mechanism to prove that you're legal, because 99.9% of the people that are putting videos on Google are not legal. And so what they're doing is they're forcing you to put ads on something to help them to make money to pay for the music that you've already paid for. So,
Yeah.
take it. That is.
And on the other side of things too, Martin, like, now I should state that you could formulate a proper counter notice, a DMCA counter notice, send it to the DMCA registered agent for YouTube, and they would have to respond and rescind their commentary, their ban or their flag or whatever it is
I did
on their
it,
system.
but the moment they take the strike away, three more robots come along and put new strikes on it. That's the
Yep.
problem. It's the mechanism. There's no mechanism to stop that happening. That was what
Well,
got
and
me.
also, I've had some people take my work and use it as like album covers for music.
Mm,
And I can send, like, these are small independent artists that aren't really making a dime on it, so I'm not going to get a lawyer involved. I'm just going to send the
mm,
takedown notices, and away you go. And so I do that. And, at SoundCloud, I've got their, of course, their registered agent. I send the notice to them and they take it down. YouTube, however, sends me this convoluted response saying, "Oh, it looks like you're trying to take down content that is registered to some other entity. And you'd have to contact them to sort it out because they're referring to the music." And I'm not referring to the music at all, but it's just a canned response automated
yeah.
from a robot saying, "No, no, we have in our database that you don't own this."
Mm,
But I'm saying, "Yeah, I do. And you don't get to debate this because that's not in the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. There's no room for your interpretation, for your judgment of this. If you start making judgments, then you're owning it."
mm,
And so I have to send a couple of letters back and forth as I continue to get canned responses. And after about the third one, I think the algorithm on their end kicks it out to an actual person.
mm,
And or maybe it's keywords that I put in, like threatening legal action or forwarding to my
mm,
my attorneys or what have you. And you throw some of those words in there, it might kick it out of that cycle. And then finally, I get a further automated response back saying that we've removed your image from this. There's so many robots involved in this
mm,
process. It's maddening for
mm,
me trying to defend my own work, but also from your perspective, defending your legitimate licenses. And it's only
mm,
going to get worse from here.
mm. Well, that's why I no longer use YouTube, and it's in a way to my detriment, because that's where the audience is. But I prefer to create my own audience and have people watch my videos via Vimeo, which is in many ways a better company. But I mean, Vimeo also have a copyright strike mechanism, but they just, if they try to put a copyright strike on something and you tell them that you have a license for it, it never happens again. And that is what Google needs, but
Yeah.
or YouTube, and they just didn't put it in place. So that's why none of my videos are on YouTube.
Facebook does have a mechanism built in that I have access to, but it's currently only associated with video content. And it will allow you to upload your sample videos, and it will scour the Facebook ecosystem to discover where that content shows up on
Mm,
Facebook. Now, I
mm,
don't do a lot of video content, and the stuff that I do is not going to be, fodder for copyright infringement specifically. A lot of my images are, however. And so Facebook has one, but not the other, not for stills. I was tempted actually to upload a video as a slideshow of a bunch of my stills that are often infringed, and seeing if Facebook would, use its own internal structure to flag all of the stills. I haven't gone that far yet, but that should be on my to-do list. Other companies manually review everything. WordPress, the company behind WordPress, Automatic. If you're hosting a website through WordPress.com, then any takedown notices go through Automatic, and they manually review everything, and they always send a response saying, "Yep, we've reviewed it, we've taken it down accordance to the DMCA," and they do a great job. And even some social media platforms, I can tell, are taking a personal approach to this. VK.com, which is like the Facebook of Russia. I'm actually surprised how responsive they are to takedown notices in laws from another country.
Wow.
But within almost minutes, they have a response, and you could tell that it's generated by a person and not a computer, because the response time will vary considerably. And they take down all of my content without question, and it's great. Some companies out there are doing this right, but others are not, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it all comes down to ownership of content.
Yeah, I don't really have quite as negative a view of Facebook, but I don't know. I can't see them being any better than Google on this. So yeah, probably not the best company to be working with NFTs. But then again, the whole NFT thing, I'm really still very much up in the air on it. If someone would give me $5,000 for one of mine, maybe I'd change my mind. So if,
me too.
Yeah,
but
I mean, if someone out there wants to make this a really good episode, and with regards to NFTs, just go to Foundation and buy one or both of my NFTs, and then we're on
at the same time,
note.
It would change my opinion, not so much as the core concept would be. My ideas would still be the same and somewhat skeptical. I might have a more positive outlook as to where things are going, but right now things are not going in a direction that is uplifting the individual artists, but rather uplifting some shadow entity in behind that seems to be pulling the strings, because there's no regulation of this. And people are stating that this is such a wonderful thing because there's no regulation. But then as soon as there's no regulation, then you get all sorts of nefarious people behind the scenes that are saying, yippee, I'm not regulated like I would be in regular markets. So it's
and what
a
was
bit of
that
a
other thing
catch-22.
I read, that someone skimmed 34 million worth of Ethereum from a hack via a hack. I mean, being able to do that in this, I went with Ethereum or Ethereum, and it's it's like, okay, there was a guy in Japan did it with Bitcoin. The guy who was running Bitcoin here or something. Oh, just skim a few million off. No one will ever notice. And okay, right.
Well, what federal government or bank is going to look at that and say, "Oh, well, somebody stole your digital cryptocurrency that we have no regulation or knowledge of"? Well, we're not going to help you. You're on your own. You chose to have a decentralized wealth system that we have no access to or any way to enforce or police or govern. You're on your own, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
Well,
it's a weird time.
It is. Let's get into our last story. Again, segues are difficult for me today. I don't know if it's just I don't have not enough caffeine in me today. But DP Review, and I've seen this reported everywhere. In fact, a good friend of mine, Steve Brazel, pointed this out to me, and I immediately went to read the rules and regulations on it. DP Review is reporting, share your best iPhone macro photos for a chance to be featured across Apple's social media and ad campaigns. So Apple is running a contest for macro photos taken with the new iPhone 13 Pros, specifically because they have a wonderful new macro functionality, which I've used, and it's actually quite good. But they're doing a contest right now where, share your best work, and you've got a chance to be featured by Apple. And all is well and good, but whenever a photo contest comes along, I read anything about what they're purporting in terms of, what the high life of a winner is going to be, and anything else. I immediately go to the terms and conditions or rules and regulations or whatever you want to call it, read the fine print, and discuss about what you give away when you enter into such a contest. Now, Martin, how do you feel about contests that ask too much?
Um, I remember many years ago I was going to do a contest. This was once of twice when I was going to do a contest, and I remember spending a weekend printing, and by Sunday evening, this is when you still sent in prints of your work, and
Right.
I on the Sunday evening after I'd been printing, I think I'd done 30 or so prints. Um, they were all laid out, and my wife and I stood over these prints, and she said, and once you've put this in, they can do whatever they want with this work, right? And I said, yeah. She said, let's not do it. Let's just keep these prints. And I didn't send them because for exactly the reason you're talking about. Yeah, it was overreaching conditions, and I have actually only done one other contest, and it's a long story as to why that was not a good experience. So I won't go into that. But yeah, I'm really just not big on competitions as such, partly because most of them they want to take a lot. They want either the copyright outright handed over to them or exclusive use. And exclusivity is expensive. I've sold one stock photograph with 5-year exclusive use, and it was for a lot of money. And
Yeah.
you don't get that kind of money. If this competition, they don't even say how much they're going to give to the 10
Oh,
winners.
that's the worst of it. Oh, they say,
Right.
"Oh, you'll get paid."
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can qualify that contractually by paying me $1,
Right.
and then you can hide that amount behind a non-disclosure agreement, so that I'm not legally allowed to say it to anybody, with a penalty of $1 million fine. And I'm not
Mm.
saying that they're going to do that. I'm just
But
saying
they
that they
could.
could. It.
Yeah.
I wish that there was more transparency with what they would actually be awarding people here,
Mm. Mm.
that we would all be able to see. But I want to read one paragraph from the terms and conditions, and this
Mm.
might make some people's eyes glaze over, but there's important language in here that I think is worth discussing, and furtherance how actually providing a submission is authenticated, which is an entirely other discussion, but it's one that I think that we should touch on here as well. So,
Mm.
providing a submission constitutes the entrant's consent to give the sponsor a royalty-free, irrevocable, non-exclusive license to use, reproduce, publish, and display such submissions in whole or in part on a worldwide basis in any form, media, or technology now known or later developed, for 1 year, for purposes of implementing the contest. Now that's normal, right? You
Mm.
have to display a submission, so they have to
Mm.
have the ability to do that.
Mm.
However, for any winner, now they don't stipulate if you get to approve this winningness or not. They just say for any winner.
Winningness.
Um, uh, providing a submission constitutes the winner's consent to give the sponsor an irrevocable, exclusive license. And
Mm.
there's that word exclusive. To use, reproduce, modify, publish, create derivative works from, and display such submissions in whole or in part on a worldwide basis, and to incorporate it into other works in any form, media, or technology now known or later developed, for the legal term of protection of copyright, including
Mm.
future legal extensions thereof. So this is not a
That's
5-year
50
license. This is
years
for
minimum.
50 years past your death or something. And of course, there's ways to elongate even further, and included but not limited to any and all internet media, including the sponsors' websites and properties on social media networking sites such as Apple Newsroom, Apple.com, Apple Twitter, Apple Instagram, Apple Weibo, and Apple WeChat, on billboards in Apple stores, Apple internal exhibitions, in digital advertising and exhibitions, photographers who shoot the final 10 winning photos will receive a licensing fee for use of such photos in the manner described above. And it goes on, but that tells the story that they would have an exclusive right to the image in perpetuity. And that also is difficult because if I've already posted that image somewhere, then am I in violation of my own copyright because I've then assigned an exclusive license to that to Apple, for which Apple could contractually sue me for having previously posted the image to Flickr? You know, there's a lot of reasons why that kind of rubs me the wrong way, but the very beginning of that paragraph, providing a submission. Martin, did you read on the main website for this content what actually a submission entails?
I didn't know. What is it?
So there is one concrete submission where you could send an email to shotoниphone@apple.com using the file format first name underscore last name underscore macro underscore iPhone model. And the subject line must be shot on iPhone macro challenge submission. And so that is a pretty explicit submission to the contest. And I don't think anybody would contest that. However, if you share a photo taken with the iPhone 13 Pro or Pro Max on Instagram and Twitter using the hashtags hashtag shot on iPhone and hashtag iPhone macro challenge to participate in the challenge. So that means that just by posting it on social media with those two tags, that Apple will constitute that as a submission to the contest, for which, if you're chosen as a winner, that you have no authority to reject according to their terms and conditions, that they have the exclusive right to use your images. And that I don't think is legal. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think you're explicitly allowing the agreement of the terms and conditions by simply using two hashtags on a social media platform.
People fish through hashtags. You type it in and you get a list of things that you can possibly use. Just tapping a few extra tags should not be enough to bind you. I imagine that they will, once they've used or picked up images via that kind of submission, they will probably say, you know, you're winning. Like you said earlier, how do you have to agree to your winningness? is it something that they're going to say, okay, you have been selected, do you accept the position of a winner? If that's there, then it could, I don't think it's illegal, but it's it's definitely a little bit on the fence whether that is legal in itself.
And for the Behind the Shot critique podcast that I do with Steve Brazel, we have a Flickr group that you have to join a specific group, and then you have to put a tag BTS critique on your images that are shared with that group. And that, I think, has a certain level of explicivity where, you are deliberately allowing us to
you have
talk
to
about
share
your
it with
images.
the group.
And even if not, we'd probably still be covered by fair use in many ways, because we're using it for critiquing purposes and we're not making any money off of it, and all of those different pillars of the copyright exemptions for that. But in this case, I don't think that would qualify, and I almost want to test this. I want to take some of the images that I shot in the iPhone 13 Pro macro mode, share them on Twitter with those hashtags, and then deliberately in the same text say, I do not submit this photo to this contest, and I'm not bound by the terms and conditions therein, and see if it gets picked up. See if anything happens with that. It would be interesting to see.
Yeah. The fun thing, like you said, how much they're going to pay is interesting. It should be, excuse me, it should be for these kind of uses a minimum of $30,000 to $40,000 per image, but I'll bet that's not what's coming across to those people. So my overall thought on this is, because at the end of the day, still being shared by Apple is a big thing, and it in a way it is possibly enough. Just being shared that way is possibly enough for some people to want to do this. And if I think at the end of the day, it's just looking at your own values. If you know what you're getting into, and being having your work shared by Apple to a very wide audience is enough, then go ahead and throw your images in here. You're not going to be putting in images that you are not happy to be shared that way. So I'm talking about not the hashtags here, but actually doing, if you want to submit work, and any sort of um, accidental submission aside, if you wanted to do this, then it's definitely something that I think many people will probably be interested in. And I wouldn't say don't do it, but you've got to understand that if you do it, then it's a very, very restrictive, if not, well, it's exclusive for the top 10. An exclusive license for a photographer means you can't do anything with it again. It sometimes you're allowed to make prints, personal prints, various things, but generally you're gonna be saying goodbye to your photo if it's accepted. And without knowing how much money that actually is going to entail, then you've just got to be happy with the fact that the sharing and the exposure is going to be pretty big. How you often see on commercials and things, a little, your name in the corner is probably all you're going to get. You're not going to get a link to your website. You're not going to get lots of new followers and things. So yeah, it's
They
probably
do state in the terms, and it's good that you mentioned that you do get credit, and it's up to Apple's prerogative how and where that credit is given for the usage, but it should
it's
almost always
usually
be
just your
given.
name. A
Yeah.
lot of the time when you see it on the commercials and things, it's a copyright symbol with the name of the photographer, and that's it. So it's not a link. It's not, and that itself. I mean, I was on Japanese TV. There was a camera crew followed along with on one of my tours here for the winter, at one of my winter tours, and they spent 3 days with us. While that was on the air, there was no link to me. My name was written in Japanese because I'm actually a Japanese national. Um, and still, my website had a huge spike of people who had obviously gone off and Googled my name and ended up on my website. So having your name out there on a very popular format is valuable. That's why I'm saying, if people understand what they're giving up, then the benefits are big. And so I definitely wouldn't say that this is something that I wouldn't do. I personally, I don't even have an iPhone 13. The iPhones are so expensive now. I'm out of the 2 year upgrade cycle that I used to do. To me now, an iPhone is a 5 year purchase, and so I I don't know. I won't be doing this, but for some people, it's maybe an enticing proposition, and if it is, then fine. I wouldn't tell people not to do it.
Yeah. I just caveat emptor, I suppose,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the Latin phrase of the day. But keeping that in mind, there's nothing to say that you can't shoot one absolutely fantastic image for your own portfolio, change the angle slightly, take another one, and those are technically
yeah,
separate works.
yeah.
So who knows exactly? The rules don't specify anything to that end. So
Mm,
regardless,
yeah,
there's Apple for you, and looks like it is, a lot of exposure that you could get from that. I guess
yeah.
a follow up question for you, Martin: if National Geographic came to you and said that
Mm,
they wanted to use one of your photos on their cover, but they wouldn't pay you,
mm.
would you let them?
Um, Probably. Partly because, well, it depends. I mean, they're making a lot of money on it. They sell their magazine in digital and in physical form. They're making a lot of money on it. I'd be tempted to refuse. I refuse work all the time because of various reasons. I With National Geographic though, if they could explain why they had no money to pay for a use, and I was happy with that reason, I would probably allow them to, because of the respect that I have for the publication. Um, but I'd have to be happy with the reason. Like, Martin, we're about to go bankrupt, and the world has changed. We have no budget for images anymore. That's the same the world over. I would consider it, but usually in a commercial exchange or transaction, if the publication or whatever the use is a commercial use, I would refuse. Probably with National Geographic, just because of who they are, I would probably say, yeah, you know what, I'm fine with that, because you're one of the best, historically one of the best publications on the planet. So I don't know,
Yeah,
hypocritical.
I think I'd probably be in the same boat if they came to me with a $0 licensing agreement. I'd say, okay, well, what am I really getting out of this?
Mm,
The exposure is one thing, I get that,
yeah,
but don't throw your weight around just because you can.
yeah.
When you do have the money to pay people, because it's going to come back and bite you.
Mm,
And I'm not saying that National Geographic ever would do that. I'm
yeah.
just using them as an example of being some of the very respected upper echelon of, oh wow, your photo is on the cover of National Geographic. It doesn't
Mm,
get much better than that kind of thing.
yeah.
And I've got a couple of publications that are going to be featuring my work in the coming months, and I can't recall if I have non-disclosure agreements signed, so I shouldn't mention who they are. But
Mm,
they are paying me.
mm,
And they're paying me a very fair price for
mm,
featuring my work. And I didn't have to negotiate that. They came to me with a price, and I looked at the number and I said, yes, that's fair. That
mm.
hasn't always been the case.
Oh
There
yeah.
have been times where I have been approached by people to license my work at zero value, and I push back and
Mm,
I end up getting something for it.
mm,
Other times, the value that they present to me really is not representative of the industry's norms, and
mm,
I share with them some previous invoices for other
mm,
usage, and they
mm,
matched it.
mm,
I guess I have the luxury of having some previous uses to say, okay, well, I have evidence saying that my work is worth this much. So either
mm,
you pay that much or you don't,
mm,
and you don't get to use it at all. And I don't mean to
mm.
be playing hardball here, but I'm not able to pay the bills
It
with exposure unless
it's
that
about
exposure is directly tangible to my reputation.
right. It's about being fair, like you said. What's a fair price, and we have to be happy with the price that we're given for our work. And if and this is both for our work, as in our finished work in the form of photographs, or our time. That I've just turned down a job because the amount offered does not match the venue, and that they want to pay a lot less than they wanted to pay a lot less than what I would consider a fair price for that work. So okay, fair enough, but thank you very much for the offer, but I can't do it at that price. And
I've met the same thing with camera clubs,
mm,
and not all of them, mind you, but some of them say, "Oh, we're a small group of a dozen people. We don't really have a budget for this." It's like, well, if you want me to do a presentation to a smaller, intimate group that could have back and forth conversations with me on the Zoom call, if it's that small of a group, then ask everybody to pitch a couple of dollars into a pot. I
mm,
mean, you're basically hosting a mini workshop at that point, and yes,
right.
if you don't have budget from your membership dues, you can find another way if you really want to make it happen.
I've done camera club talks for pretty low fees, you know, because that's all they had. And so I'm kind of okay with working for a small amount if I'm happy with the agreement. But when it's obvious that the person that is asking you to do the talk has is either has a lot more money in the background. I mean, I I can't, like you said, I didn't even get to the point where I signed an NDA. It's not that I'm not going to, just out of respect, I'm not going to give the name, but it was a company that I would have expected to be able to pay a little more, and I thought, it's fine. It's both amicably agreed that it was not going to be the best thing to do at this point, but yeah, I mean, some people, I think, and part of it as well is the geography. Japan apparently doesn't pay professionals very much money for what other countries. I mean, the US in the same situation would have easily matched what I asked for the job.
Right.
There was a guy on TV here a few months ago. I didn't see it, but my wife mentioned it to me because we talk about pricing a lot. Um, the Japanese mentality. If the price of a loaf of bread goes up 2 yen, it's on the news, and they interview housewives that all of a sudden are going to be devastated because they can't afford the bread anymore. They can afford a Louis Vuitton bag, but they can't afford a 20, 2 or 3 yen increase in the bread. Now, we talk about this sort of stuff a lot. What this guy was saying apparently was I think it was a sword maker, someone that made traditional Japanese swords, which are like folded. The metal is folded 20 times. It takes weeks to make a sword. And if
I
you
have
want,
a kitchen knife like that, and it was ridiculously expensive.
oh yeah. So this guy was telling the craftsman, the person who made the swords, you're selling this the amount of work that goes into this, and you're selling it for, I think it was something like $20,000. He said, I could buy this from you for $20,000, take it to the US and sell it for $200,000. Why don't you sell it in the US for $200,000? Because it's worth this amount. And it's this mentality that my time is worth so little that they don't have the respect for themselves in many ways to say this is what my time is worth. And that was my point. I've done camera club talks for much less than I refused for this job, but it's about what I believe I should be getting for that. And so fairness, our acceptance is really important when we do any kind of work. And so whether we feel that it's a fair price for the cover of Nat Geo or for a camera club talk or whatever, as long as we feel that we're getting paid what we should be for it, then the price itself is completely negotiable.
Very well said. And just to put a little bit of icing on that cake, I had submitted some photos to a photo contest in Canada, visualizing science from Canadian Science Publishing. And in the terms and conditions, of course, I always read these. They stated that one of the potential benefits of, or ways your images could be used, is they might end up on the covers of some scientific journals.
Mm,
And that doesn't mean that you won any prize money or got a gift or anything for that. It's just, that was one of the line items that, okay, you're agreeing that this is a possibility. And I said, you know
mm,
what? That's fine. I mean,
mm,
to be on the cover of a scientific journal is, that would be a feather in my cap, even if I get $0 for it.
mm.
Well, turns out my images are now featured on the cover of two Canadian scientific journals, the Canadian Journal of Physics and the Canadian Journal of Microbiology, in their
Oh,
2022
congratulations.
editions. So thank you. And I don't, would I have liked to have gotten paid a bit for that? Sure.
Mm,
Am I satisfied with the way it happened? Yes, very much so.
mm,
And
mm.
I'll be able to. One of them is still a print publication, and they're sending me a copy of that. That I will
Nice.
have it framed up, and I've got the PDF artwork of both of them, so that I could print off the other one and have them match if I need to. So,
Ah,
but that's
excellent.
okay. There's no issue with that in my perspective. Similar to the National Geographic cover idea, but
Mm, mm.
you take those wins as you want them, and just
Yeah,
make sure
yeah.
that you know your worth.
That's the important thing. Knowing what you're worth, having the or being brave enough to ask for it is another thing. People are
Yeah.
often too scared to talk about money, and you have to talk about money if you're doing this for business. You know.
Yep. Well said. Well said. Well, that winds down the stories for this episode. Martin, you want anything you want to plug before we get into the picks of the week?
Um, Not really. I mean, my audience knows where to find me. For your audience, come and find me at martinbaileyphotography.com and check out my the menus at the top there, which are linked to everything. I my desk clock that I was talking about earlier for the iPhone is going to be beautiful, and I really hope that some people want to check that out. So come along. There's also a newsletter subscription form, and one of the options is to get notifications of iPhone app releases and updates. So if you're interested and you think you might forget, come and sign up for that. But otherwise, I think just check out my website and see if there's anything there
And
you like.
I encourage everybody to do that, because not only is Martin a good friend of mine, he's also an excellent photographer, an excellent educator, and you can find more episodes of his podcast there and all of his apps as well. People listening from Martin's side, you can find me at photogeekweekly.com. That's where the podcast is and all of the show notes and all previous episodes. But me personally, my website is doncom.ca, donkom.ca or .bg. I have that domain name too. So
I saw that in
if you
your
have
email.
you have the Bulgarian persuasion, you can you put it just goes to the same website right now. But I'm glad that I can officially register, because it's actually a pretty tricky process to register. I don't know what the registering a Japanese TLD is, but you have to be a Bulgarian permanent resident or citizen and show proof of that in person to an office here in one of the major cities in order to get registration.
Yeah, there are some restrictions. I think the co-JP, which should be for a company, you have to prove that you're actually a company in Japan. So they have similar checks for certain things. But yeah, it's I like to use the .com, but I have some short links. My short link generator is mbp.ac, and I use that as academy in my own mind. But all of my short links are run from mbp.ac/whatever. So that's all. It's a nice short one.
Isn't just as a brief aside here, as we are well over time, but isn't the .tv top level domain TLD, isn't that owned by the island nation of Tuvalu? And then there was some talk a few years ago about rising sea levels wiping out some of those island nations. And what if the nation of Tuvalu no longer exists? What happens to all of the .tv domains? And the world is in a very interesting place these days.
Yeah. Well, they made a whole lot of different, like you can get Guru and all sorts, can't you?
You can buy your own now. Canon owns .canon. For
Really? I
example,
didn't
and I
know
think you've
that.
got to pay some stupid amount of money, like $100,000, in order to
Yeah.
maintain your own top level domain. Now it's possible; anything's possible.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I definitely would like MVP, but I doubt if at $100,000 or so, it's not going to happen
Hey,
unless
if somebody
someone
wants to
buys
buy
some of
one of
some of
Martin's
my
NFTs,
NFTs. Yeah.
yeah, pay through the nose for one of those. Pay 10 times what it's worth, times 2, and then Martin can get .mvp as a top level domain. Come on, make it happen for the man.
Yeah.
We all want to see that.
And you
of course,
know
there's
what?
better
With all
things
of
that I'm
my
sure you'd spend your money on.
with all of my tours going out of the window for the last few years, if someone wants to buy some of my NFTs, the money's got much better places to go to than buying the top level domain. But either
Right
way,
on.
either way.
I hear you on that front too. Let's get into the picks here. You've got a really interesting one that I haven't seen been picked, at least on this podcast before on Photo Geek Weekly, but it's one that I am familiar with. So why don't you fill in the listeners?
Sure. For many years I've been using Photomagico, Boink Software's Photomagico, to make slideshows on the Mac. I used to use a different package on Windows, and they went away, especially because they went away afterwards. But I switched to Mac, started using Photomagico to make slideshows, and they have recently switched. They've released version 6 and switched to a subscription model, which is not going to be the best. Some people don't like subscription models. I'm quite happy with it. It's like $10 a month, and you can stop and start if you want to. But
and they have a free trial, a 2-week free trial as well.
Yeah. But Photomagico, it's just a really good way of making nice looking videos or slideshows of images. And of course, you can embed video in there. Pretty much all of my video slideshows are created with Photomagico, but their new version 6, I'm just getting into it. I can't tell you what's new and everything, but the interface is become slightly more refined. It's a bit sleeker, and I'm just really happy with it. I'm starting to work on a new slideshow of my microscope work, which I should once again just quickly thank Don, at least partially, for getting me into, because it was your influence from your book that got me started thinking about it. So I I can't wait to really dive in. And over the next few weeks, I'll be releasing a podcast about how I've been using it and share the new slideshow as well. So Photomagico
I
from
believe,
Boinks Software.
if I'm not mistaken, that Photomagico lets you kind of throw everything into a roughly automatic slideshow. It's got that option to just kind of take your bucket of images and start things off for you.
Yeah,
But then you go in and you can customize everything to the nth degree. Once it
absolutely.
kind of gives you a foundation of how everything is loaded, you don't have to start from scratch like you do in like an Adobe Premiere timeline and carefully orchestrate every single little thing from the beginning to the very
Mm.
end. This gives you something to start from and then work with and massage to your liking.
Yeah, I mean, you can take a piece of music. Say you have a piece of music that's 3 minutes long, throw in 100 photos, and it will automatically make them all sort of fit. And it looks at the beat and everything as well. So you can get a lot out of the. I don't know if it's AI, but there's definitely a lot of intelligence behind how it does all of those automated stuff. But yeah, I generally will just go in and set a time. I generally create my own music for the slideshows as well, so it's very highly customized. But yeah, as you say, Don, it's a really good platform for not so much platform, the software, for tweaking the hell out of it and making it really really
Until
look nice.
computers are sentient, I think AI is just a term for fancy algorithms. And so
Yeah,
if you have
yeah,
fancy algorithms, you can call it AI all you want. Everybody else is, for that matter. So call it AI, sure.
yeah,
It's got artificial intelligence in there, deep learning, whatever term you wish to utilize. But if
yeah,
it's matching images to the beat of a music, sure, why not?
yeah,
Call it AI.
yeah.
um,
What's your pick,
my
Don?
uh, my pick is kind of going back to the iPhone challenge. It was reminded that I hadn't actually picked it, and it's something that I've used for my macro work on my iPhone 13 Pro. And um, one of the things that an iPhone in the past has always been good for is loading up the default camera app, not really having to worry about anything, pressing a button, and it works.
Mm,
And Apple excels at that.
mm,
But when I want fine tuned control, you don't find it there. And
mm,
so I have been using an app that basically there's three kind of four pillars that I require for an app to have.
mm,
Um, the lesser of the four is manual exposure, because so many apps do that to control the exposure. But the other three is shooting raw, so I get a DNG file at the backside, which is perfect if I do want to massage things on my computer afterwards. But I don't really care about the raw file on the phone itself.
mm,
But if I am doing some professional work, you want that. Another
mm,
one is manual focus, especially for macro work. Being able to manually focus those lenses is so critical because, I mean, let's face it, most of the time, if you're at the closest focusing distance you can get to, you might be too close. And this is true
mm,
for macro photography in general. And then an autofocus algorithm is going to focus to something further away, not the thing
mm,
that you want. So
mm,
manually being able to set that focus where you want is critical, and to know exactly where that focus is, to have focus peaking of some kind. No matter how big your screen is, diffraction limiting and exactly where that depth of field is going to fall, and so many things can be much better understood when you get a little fuzzy blue or red line around the image
mm,
showing you where that focus point is roughly associated with. That is such a huge asset.
mm,
And checking all of those boxes is Halide. Halide
mm.
Mark II is their current version of the app, found at halide.cam. There's another interesting top level domain. But Halide and the folks behind that, they've been doing a really good job, and they take into account the macro mode of the new iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max. That they've got like a crop in an AI, there's an AI word again, powered version where they can find more details than there actually is in the image. And I'd prefer not to do that in the app. I'd prefer to take the raw data and process it through, Topaz Gigapixel AI or whatever other algorithm I have more control over, and have some use for it. But it's good on all iPhones, not just the latest one. So Martin, you could check that out as well.
I'm just
And
typing it in as you speak.
it is the most powerful iPhone camera app that I have seen. When you're coming to the table as a professional photographer that is used to using a camera with buttons and knobs and dials and having control over things, Halide. Halide.cam is the app that I would use. And they're continuing to improve. Since I started using it, they've added more features specifically for that macro mode, as I mentioned. And whether or not I use them doesn't matter. The fact that they are listening and responsive to the people that are using their content is a company that I want to promote. And Martin is installing the app as we speak.
Yeah, you've sold me at least. It's got in-app purchases, so I'll go and see what they're adding for a little bit of extra money.
I can't remember how much it cost to basically have full access to the app, but it was not on a subscription basis. It was just a one-time fee, and whatever it was worth it to have as my, again, the default Apple app on my phone is that, like, if I'm picking up my phone to do a snapshot, that's what I use. There's no question about it. But when I pick up my phone to actually use something, even when I'm doing behind the scenes images, like taking photos of the macro setups that I use, and always great to have that behind the scenes image. I've taken a liking to using Halide versus the built-in app, just because it's got more features and bells and whistles and gives me better results. And at the end of the day, better results while still being just as convenient. That's the trade-off that I want, right? Where you're not really giving up much aside from maybe a few seconds of pressing a couple of buttons to make sure that you're where you need to be. That's worth it for me in the end.
Yeah, it sounds great. I'll be throwing a few pennies that way, and
all right,
you'd make it my
Martin,
own as well.
I want to thank you for welcoming me on your podcast, but also vice versa, to kind of cross the streams here, which I don't think we're supposed to do. But we've gone ahead and done it.
Yeah, but we've obviously, my listeners will know that this is completely your format. But it was a bit of fun, and I have thoroughly enjoyed. We've been talking for about an hour and a half just for the podcast, so it's a long one.
We
but
could
really,
have gone
thank you,
for
Don.
2 hours. Honestly, I could
we
have
could
thrown
speak
a few
for the
more
whole
stories
night
in here, or I could have just this wonderful camaraderie that we have. You talk about spending time talking to a camera club and getting paid for your time in various things. This is food for my soul. I don't get paid to record any episodes of this podcast ever. We're at, how many episodes are you up to now, Martin?
760. This will be 69, I think. Yeah, I've actually
I'm not going to catch up to you.
I have a conversation with Valerie Jardin on the way out. That will be going out on Monday, and this will be shortly after that. So this will be, I think it's 769. So yeah,
okay,
what about the Photo Geek Weekly? I mean, you've done a fair amount. What number are you up to?
165 is what this one is going to be.
Oh,
and
cool.
As much as I try to do it weekly, I do miss a period, and there was a couple of months of being dark during the move and getting resituated and all of that, and we're back up to it. And I want to restart my Inside the Lens podcast, talking about detailed deep dives into a specific topic with an expert in there. I think I did one with you on printing to that end, and I got a couple of other great ideas. It's just a matter of finding the time right now, and there's still a lot of logistics happening on my end. We've got to drive into the city after we're done recording this, and I'm sure my wife, while I've been sitting here having this wonderful conversation, has made a to-do list that scribbles on the front and then onto the back of a piece of paper. So that's going to be next before I can think about Inside the Lens. But it'd be great to have you back on either of those at some point. And a huge thanks to everybody that has listened to this, because Martin and I, to speak for you, Martin, I'm sure that you don't mind me putting these words in your mouth, but I don't necessarily do this just for myself. If I wanted to talk into the wind, I can do that. But to have this conversation with another person and to have listeners that might feel a part of the conversation, it doesn't have to be a lot. But just to kind of be a part of a community in a sense is quite valuable for my own personal well-being, and to have the interactions and the feedback that I get from people. It just makes it all worthwhile. And at the end of the day, I go to bed happy at night, knowing that people are listening to me talking into their ears while I'm sleeping somewhere around the world.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, I can't imagine not doing it. Although, there are times when it's difficult to come up with something to talk about. I can't imagine not doing this. So I'll probably be here if I'm still alive in 20 years, I'll probably still be podcasting.
I look forward to listening to episode 1000.
Yeah, hopefully it shouldn't be too far out. Well done,
all
really.
Right. Well,
thanks
you. Everybody.
Thank you, and thank you everybody.
Do you have a tagline that you end with?
I usually just say, have a great week, take care, whatever you're doing.
All right, and I will end with, it's time to get out and shoot.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that bit of fun. Longer than usual, but hopefully worth it. Before we finish, I just wanted to jump in and thank our new Patreon supporters, David and Alex, and remind you that Don and I will be doing a joint presentation, and I'll be doing a solo presentation on microphotography at the Out of Chicago Live event this coming March, so March 11 to 13, 2022. And you can find details and sign up for this amazing event at outofchicago.com. Thanks very much for listening today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider supporting us on Patreon, which comes with various tiers of benefits depending on your contribution, although all tiers provide access to the full blog posts for more than 760 episodes, as well as access to the MVP community. For more details, check out our Patreon page at mbp.ac/Patreon. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com, so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back next week with another episode, but once again, in the meantime, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.